and I'll be talking about the work of Tsai Ming-liang, a Taiwanese director, well, Taiwan-based director because actually born in Malaysia. And the title of my paper, actually, I changed. I think that sort of like reflects a little bit better what I will be talking about, which is watching cinema disappear, a static experience in Tsai Ming-liang's Stray Dogs. So what do we think of André Bazin's conceptualization of the sequence shot, or David Bordwell's take on cinematic staging, or numerous studies on long-take directors such as Mizoguchi, Wells, and Offels? The intermedial property of the long take is often said to reside in the way it elicits the mobile mise-en-scène associated with theatre. In this paper, however, I want to explore the connection, the intermediality of the long take, not in relation to movement, but in connection with stillness, in order to examine how this stillness, which forges dialogues with immobile visual art forms such as painting and photography, translates into an aesthetic form that struggles to survive in the space of the film theatre, migrating to that of the museum. I will argue that the work of Taiwan-based Tsai Ming-liang provides an especially productive avenue through which to reflect on these questions, for his is a cinema that not only has been increasingly exhibited in both spaces, as it has also blurred the aesthetic boundaries associated with such spaces within the conceptual space of films themselves, an aspect which, as I hope to show, is particularly illustrated by Stray Dogs, his last feature film. Tsai participates in a wider contemporary trend now broadly referred to as a cinema of slowness, one of the main tenets of which is what I have elsewhere defined as the hyperbolic application of the long take. Significantly, however, the long take adopted in slow cinema, premised as it is on silence, minimalism, and duration, differ in considerable ways from the Bazinian sequence shot, which was conceptualized on the basis of narrative efficiency as derived from the orchestrated movement of characters within the frame. By contrast, the slowness of slow cinema can be said to reside in its lack of movement, that is to say, in its stillness. Whether we are looking at the stillness of the camera, that of diegetic action, or both combined. The work of Tsai Ming-liang is particularly fascinating in this context, for he has pursued a radicalization of both forms of stillness over the course of 20 years, with his films accordingly becoming less attached to narrative structures and more experimental. In fact, Stray Dogs is avowedly the director's last feature film, as he has declared he will now concentrate on making short films and installations for museums and art galleries. In addition, Tsai's disengagement from traditional cinema has also found expression in many of his films, some of which directly focus on the waning of cinema as an institution and practice, such as Goodbye Dragon Wing and the short It's a Dream. With the advantage of hindsight, Goodbye Dragon Wing, which was filmed entirely in a film theatre that had just closed its doors, gestured towards a subtle though significant shift in the director's career and style. While Tsai's narratives had always been elusive, here it was the case of a film with a decidedly more episodic structure. This film also pushed Tsai's application of the long take into a more radical direction in terms of stillness, if only we consider its most celebrated and much commented upon shot. So this is a shot which I want to show now. I'm not going to really show the entire because it lasts for like 6 minutes, but it's pretty well known, which is of an empty film theater. It starts with a ticket vendor. She walks into the frame from the right. She will clean the upper part of the auditorium. The camera will remain static. After she leaves the frame, the camera continues rolling for 3 minutes, sort of like just recording the empty sort of like film auditorium. And allegedly, Tsai said that he actually, like the reason that he said the film reel actually finished. That's the whole, it's like he couldn't say cut. The camera sort of like carried on filming this empty auditorium. But let me just sort of here, and so So this is kind of like, you have 3 minutes of this completely sort of empty auditorium. And I will leave this empty auditorium for a little bit, for a few seconds, so that you can sort of like have an idea, because obviously this is the whole point, to be sort of confronted with this empty space for minutes on end. So I will return to this scene in a minute, because it is quite important for the argument I'm developing here. Subsequently, in 2006, Tsai produced another work on the end of cinema, a 3-minute short entitled It's a Dream, filmed in a disused film theatre to be demolished, this time the director's native soil, Malaysia. Commissioned for the Cannes Film Festival upon its 60th anniversary for the portmanteau Chacun son cinéma, this film was later turned into a 23-minute moving installation and showcased at the Venice Biennale for the Taipei Fine Arts Museum in 2007. Using exactly the same images featured in the short but held on screen for longer, Tsai collected 54 chairs before the theatre was demolished and relocated them into the museum, which became part of the Taipei Fine Arts Museum's permanent collection in 2010. So these are the chairs, and I couldn't really get like a better picture, but this is one of the issues of It's a Dream. Together, Goodbye Dragoon and It's a Dream signaled Tsai's gradual disconnection from traditional cinema and his concomitant refashioning as an intermediate artist. Although the director would continue to make feature films, he became again involved in theatre and performance art, both of which he had pursued prior to his filmmaking career and which he now channeled into audiovisual installations produced for galleries. At the same time, this cross-media direction started interfering with the modes of production and address of his feature films. The obvious example here is Visage, his penultimate feature that was commissioned by and mostly set in the Louvre Museum, and whose practically non-existent narrative and tableau-like long takes made it indeed look more like an installation rather than a feature film. In light of all of this, Stray Dogs, I would argue, can be seen as the aesthetic culmination of an increasingly intermediate stance in Tsai's work, whereby cinema, understood as a medium, practice, and institution, dissolve into new forms and migrate into new spaces. Like all Tsai's films, Stray Dogs features Tsai's muse Li Kangsheng, here playing the part of an alcoholic homeless man with 2 children who perversely makes a living by holding up luxury property advertising placards. The film also features 3 female characters, all played by Tsai's regulars, who are seen with their 2 children at different points and who, according to the film's press notes, are meant to be the same character in a Buñuelesque fashion. The fact remains, however, that the viewer is likely unable to arrive at this conclusion on his or her own terms, for this is a glaringly laconic film, largely devoid of narrative. While the social grounding of Tsai cinema is here stronger than ever, as demonstrated by its unwavering focus on urban destitution and marginalization, there is hardly storyline to be followed in Stray Dogs, with the film stitching together mysterious and bizarre events which can be seen as standalone audiovisual tableaus in their own right. In particular, the film is punctuated by the mysterious apparition of a painted rectangular mirror before which characters seem utterly transfixed, opening up a space for spectatorial reflection on questions of aesthetic experience and intermediality, as I will now proceed to demonstrate. So I've got 2 scenes here, and they are quite long. So that's the first one. So this panoramic mural, which shows an idyllic mountainous region surrounded by lake and rocks, first appears halfway through the film, as it is chanced upon and then contemplated by the character played by Lu Yixing for 3 minutes. So this is a scene that lasts 3 minutes. Like she's like static, like motionless, completely sort of transfixed by this mural. And obviously, time is audible. That's the second time the mural appears in the film is in its very last shot, which lasts nearly 7 minutes and is preceded by a 14-minute long take, the longest of Tsai's career, of Li and Shang-Chi in medium. So before this particular shot, they are both sort of like in medium close-up, staring off into the same direction. They start sort of like shedding tears, sort of inexplicably. You don't quite know what they are sort of seeing. And it is only when the scene cuts to this to a static long shot of both characters from behind that the viewer realizes that they are watching, that they're contemplating the mural in the film. And so the viewer is able to confirm that their sort of object of attention, of visual fixation, is the same mural that had the other character sort of mesmerized. So let me just speed up a little bit so that you can see what happens. So Chen, she disengages from Li at one point. Oh, hang on. She disengages from Li, and he continues to sort of like contemplate the mural for like 3 minutes, and he exits the frame finally. And the mural remains on show in a stationary shot for another 2 minutes, the second of which without ambient sound, before the screen fades into black and the credits start sort of like rolling. So this is what, you know, the viewers, this is the very sort of like last shot of the film. Significantly, this enigmatic mural is itself an installation piece by a Taiwanese artist, Cao Jun-hon. While researching the photographic archives of the region of Taoyuan for a project on the remnants of the coal industry in southern Taipei, Cao stumbled upon a series of images of the Liuju village in Kaohsiung City, taken in 1871 by a Scottish traveller named John Thomson. Seeing this image, and this is the photograph, as a historical fragment of that particular era, as immortalized by a neurocentric gaze, Cao decided to alter these photographs by turning them into enlarged drawings, painted with charcoal on the walls of abandoned spaces. In this way, he claims, and I'm quoting, the dialectical relationship of images between me and Thomson is thereby expanded, with images that are considered to be historical fragments reproduced in a ruined site, which is also considered to be a form of historical fragment as well. Tsai allegedly found this painting accidentally while location scouting for stray dogs. Unaware of Cao's work, the director recalls the moment of coming across the mural as a very moving sight, a reaction that is therefore recreated in the film through characters profoundly touched by it. What is so fascinating here is how the trajectory of these two practitioners, working with different materials, converged in an industrial ruinous site, which is a recurrent theme in both their artistic practices. In Tsai's case, moreover, the appearance of derelict buildings are often closely aligned with the disappearance of cinema itself, as proved by Goodbye Dragon and It's a Dream, both of which, as we have seen, took place in theaters that were about to be either closed or even demolished in the case of Tsai's A Dream, with Tsai further transplanting the cinema seats that appear in the latter into an ensuing installation piece. By contrast, the relocation of photographs of the photograph in the form of a painted intervention on the walls of this building arguably evokes associations with cinema itself, if only because of its gigantic size and rectangular format, which calls to mind a widescreen. Tsai capitalizes on these associations by placing characters contemplating this image for minutes on end, which affects an inscription of the spectator into the visual structure of the image. The mural is seen as being seen by virtually motionless characters who, by the very dint of their immobility, remind the viewer of her own spectating activity, while the stillness of the image comments on the inaction of the scene itself. No less importantly, this mise en abîme of sorts is visually compounded by the perspectival framing, as the centrally positioned mural in the background provides a receding mirror of smaller proportions of the film's own frame. As a result, this scene brings about a heightened awareness of the viewing process in a manner not dissimilar to the one conjured by the long take of an empty cinema auditorium in Goodbye Dragon Inn. In this respect, it is interesting to note how spectatorial inscription, which is a trademark of most, if not all, Tsai's films, has taken different forms as associated with the blurring of the exhibition spaces in his work. For if Goodbye Dragon Inn reveals a disused cinema materialized in the stark barrenness of empty seats, and if the spectatorial process associated with cinema would be transposed into a museum through the actual relocation of disused cinema seats in It's a Dream, then the final image of Stray Dogs, which features only a still image on the wall, no seats at all, and standing observers, smuggles something of the mode of aesthetic apprehensions associated with the museum into the cinema. In fact, these standing observers prefigure the ensuing mode of experience of the film itself, which, like It's a Dream, was transformed earlier this year into a 3-channel installation piece with aleatory scenes being projected onto walls. On closer inspection then, Stray Dogs' deceptively straightforward closing image reveals a vertiginous intermedial kaleidoscope. Here, film's once most basic material, a photograph, has been transformed into an enlarged painted mural, repurposed in the context of an abandoned space, filmed by a digital camera, incorporated into a fictional feature film, and then transformed into a multimedia channel exhibition in a museum. No less importantly, this promiscuous intermediality not only revolves around the inscribed figure of the spectators, as it does so within a ruinous site, which is a place of material and temporal hybridization par excellence. As Tim Ederson argues, the space of the ruin is characterized by multiple relations between things, space, non-human life, and humans by virtue of the unusual situations, the juxtapositions which occur between things, and the hybridities which evolve, merging objects with life forms and other objects. As such, industrial ruins are themselves places in which the becomings of new forms, orderings, and aesthetics can emerge, for while they perform a physical remembering of the past which has vanished, they also gesture towards the present and the future as temporal frames which can be read as both utopian and dystopian. And obviously I'm quoting Tim here. In the case of this final image of Stray Dogs, supposedly the last of Tsai's cinematic oeuvre, I would argue that its ruinous intermediality serves to visualize the different time frames associated with the aesthetic experience of an ever-changing cinema. As Lutz Kopnik has recently argued, and I'm quoting, to experience objects aesthetically involves our ability to actively register a partial loss or a rapturous expansion of sensory perception as much as to investigate the feel of pushing against the ways in which works of art pull us into seeing the world through different eyes. And an experience he associates, and I quote, with forms that stretch artistic representation towards or beyond the limits once associated with a specific medium. In this respect, intermediality is more profitably understood as the site of a crisis of the medium which requires another for its completion, as Lucien Agib has suggested. Then I would argue that what is in crisis in Stray Dogs is the very idea of cinema itself and its traditional mode of spectatorship, an idea which is being stretched along different temporal vectors and opened up into multiple trajectories: the nostalgic cinema of the past, the changing cinema of the present, and the uncertain cinema of the future, all interlacing around the figure of a spectator who is simultaneously reminded of the here and now of aesthetic experience and of the power of art in reconfiguring our perception of the world. Thank you.